and the tanner may need a new pot. These people may not be personally acquainted with one another, and their needs may not occur all at the same time. A monetary system is a way of organizing these obligations to ensure that they are fulfilled. From the days of the earliest monetaristic civilizations, monopolistic controls of monetary systems have benefited the social and political elites. The transition from simpler to more complex economies does not necessarily mean an improvement in the living standards of the populace. For example, although the Middle Ages is often portrayed as an era of decline from the Roman Empire, studies have shown that the average stature of males in the Middle Ages, c. 500 to 1500 CE, was greater than it was for males during the preceding Roman Empire and the succeeding early modern period, c. 1500 to 1800 CE. 3940. Also, the Plains Indians of North America in the 19th century were taller than their civilized American and European counterparts. The average stature of a population is a good measurement of the adequacy of its access to necessities, especially food, and its freedom from disease. 41. Writing, developed first by people in Sumer, is considered a hallmark of civilization and appears to accompany the rise of complex administrative bureaucracies or the conquest state. 42. Traders and bureaucrats relied on writing to keep accurate records. Like money, the writing was necessitated by the size of the population of a city and the complexity of its commerce among people who are not all personally acquainted with each other. However, writing is not always necessary for civilization, as shown by the Inca civilization of the Andes, which did not use writing at all but except for a complex recording system consisting of knotted strings of different lengths and colors, the quipus, and still functioned as a civilized society. Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher and scientist, aided by their division of labor and central government planning, civilizations have developed many other diverse cultural traits. These include organized religion, development in the arts, and countless new advances in science and technology. Assessments of what level of civilization a polity has reached are based on comparisons of the relative importance of agricultural as opposed to trading and manufacturing capacities, the territorial extensions of its power, the complexity of its division of labor, and the carrying capacity of its urban centers. Secondary elements include a developed transportation system, writing, standardized measurement, currency, contractual and tort-based legal systems, art, architecture, mathematics, scientific understanding, metallurgy, political structures, and organized religion. As a contrast with other societies, the idea of civilization implies a progression or development from a previous uncivilized state. Traditionally, cultures that defined themselves as civilized often did so in contrast to other societies or human groupings viewed as less civilized, calling the latter barbarians, savages, and primitives. Indeed, the modern Western idea of civilization developed as a contrast to the indigenous cultures European settlers encountered. The European colonization of the Americas and Australia. 43. The term primitive, once used in anthropology, has now been largely condemned by anthropologists because of its derogatory connotations and because it implies that the cultures it refers to are relics of a past time that do not change or progress. 44. Because of this, societies regarding themselves as civilized have sometimes sought to dominate and assimilate uncivilized cultures into a civilized way of living. 45. In the 19th century, the idea of European culture as civilized and superior to uncivilized non-European cultures was fully developed, and civilization became a core part of European identity. 46. The idea of civilization can also be used as a justification for dominating another culture and dispossessing a people of their land. For example, in Australia, British settlers justified the displacement of indigenous Australians by observing that the land appeared uncultivated and wild, which to them reflected that the inhabitants were not civilized enough to improve it. 43. The behaviors and modes of subsistence that characterize civilization have been spread by colonization, invasion, religious conversion, the extension of bureaucratic control and trade, and by the introduction of new technologies to cultures that did not previously have them. Though aspects of culture associated with civilization can be freely adopted through contact between cultures, since early modern times Eurocentric ideals of civilization have been widely imposed upon cultures through coercion and dominance. These ideals complemented a philosophy that assumed there were innate differences between civilized and uncivilized peoples. 46. Cultural identity. Civilization can also refer to the culture of a complex society, not just the society itself. Every society, civilization or not, has a specific set of ideas and customs, and a certain set of manufactures and arts that make it unique. Civilizations tend to develop intricate cultures, including a state-based decision-making apparatus, a literature, professional art, architecture, organized religion and complex customs of education, coercion and control associated with maintaining the elite. The intricate culture associated with civilization has a tendency to spread to and influence other cultures, sometimes assimilating them into the civilization, a classic example being Chinese civilization and its influence on nearby civilizations such as Korea, Japan and Vietnam. 47. Many civilizations are actually large cultural spheres containing many nations and regions. The civilization in which someone lives is that person's broadest cultural identity. 48. 49. A Blue Shield international mission in Libya during the war in 2011 to protect the cultural assets there. It is precisely the protection of this cultural identity that is becoming increasingly important nationally and internationally. According to international law, the United Nations and UNESCO try to set up and enforce relevant rules. The aim is to preserve the cultural heritage of humanity and also the cultural identity, especially in the case of war and armed conflict. According to Karl von Habsburg, president of Blue Shield International, the destruction of cultural assets is also part of psychological warfare. The target of the attack is often the opponent's cultural identity, which is why symbolic cultural assets become a main target. It is also intended to destroy particularly sensitive cultural memory, museums, archives, monuments, etc., the growing cultural diversity, and the economic basis, such as tourism, of a state, region or community. 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. Many historians have focused on these broad cultural spheres and have treated civilizations as discrete units. Early 20th century philosopher Oswald Spengler, 56, uses the German word culture for what many call a civilization. Spengler believed a civilization's coherence is based on a single primary cultural symbol. Cultures experience cycles of birth, life, decline, and death, often supplanted by a potent new culture, formed around a compelling new cultural symbol. Spengler states civilization is the beginning of the decline of a culture as the most external and artificial states of which a species of developed humanity is capable. 56. This unified culture concept of civilization also influenced the theories of historian Arnold J. Toynbee in the mid-20th century. Toynbee explored civilization processes in his multi-volume study of history which traced the rise and, in most cases, the decline of 21 civilizations and 5 arrested civilizations. Civilizations generally declined and fell, according to Toynbee, because of the failure of a creative minority, through moral or religious decline, to meet some important challenge, rather than mere economic and environmental causes. Samuel P. Huntington defines civilization as the highest cultural grouping of people and the broadest level of cultural identity people have short of that which distinguishes humans from other species. 48. Complex systems. Depiction of United Medes and Persians at the Apadana Persepolis. Another group of theorists, making use of systems theory, looks at a civilization as a complex system, i.e., a framework by which a group of objects can analyze that work in concert to produce some sort. Civilizations can be seen as networks of entities that emerge from pre-urban cultures and are defined by the economic, political, military, diplomatic, social and cultural interactions among team. Any organization is a complex social system and a civilization is a large organization. Systems theory helps guard against superficial and misleading analogies in the study and description of civilizations. Systems theorists look at many types of relations between cities, including economic relations, cultural exchanges and political / diplomatic / military relations. These spheres often occur on different scales. For example, trade networks were, until the 19th century, much larger than either cultural spheres or political spheres. Extensive trade routes, including the Silk Road through Central Asia and Indian Ocean Sea routes linking the Roman Empire, Persian Empire, India and China, were well established 2,000 years ago when these civilizations scarcely shared any political, diplomatic, military, or cultural relations. The first evidence of such long-distance trade is in the ancient world. During the Uruk period, Guillermo Algés has argued that trade relations connected Egypt, Mesopotamia, Iran and Afghanistan. 57. Resin found later in Throyal Cemetery at Ur is suggested was traded northwards from Mozambique. Many theorists argue that the entire world has already become integrated into a single world system, a process known as globalization. Different civilizations and societies all over the globe are economically, politically, and even culturally interdependent in many ways. There is debate over when this integration began, and what sort of integration, cultural, technological, economic, political, or military diplomatic, is key indicator in determining the extent of a civilization. David Wilkinson has proposed that economic and military diplomatic integration of the Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations resulted in the creation of what he calls the Central Civilization around 1500 BCE. 58. Central Civilization later expanded to include the entire Middle East and Europe, and then expanded to a global scale with European colonization integrating the Americas, Australia, China and Japan by the 19th century. According to Wilkinson, civilizations can be culturally heterogeneous, like the Central Civilization, or homogeneous, like the Japanese civilization. What Huntington calls the clash of civilizations might be characterized by Wilkinson as a clash of cultural spheres within a single global civilization. Others point to the crusading movement as the first step in globalization. The more conventional viewpoint is that networks of societies have expanded and shrunk since ancient times, and that the current globalized economy and culture is a product of recent European colonialism. History. The notion of human history as a succession of civilizations is an entirely modern one. In the European age of discovery, emerging modernity was put into stark contrast with the Neolithic and Mesolithic stage of the cultures of many of the peoples they encountered. 59. Nonetheless, developments in the Neolithic stage, such as agriculture and sedentary settlement, were critical to the development of modern conceptions of civilization. 60. 61. Urban revolution. The Natufian culture in the Levantine corridor provides the earliest case of a Neolithic revolution, with the planting of cereal crops attested from c. 11,000 BCE. 62, 63. The earliest Neolithic technology and lifestyle established first in Western Asia, for example at Göbekli Tepe, from about 9130 BCE, later in the Yellow River and Yangtze basins in China, for example the Palaeogen and Pentateuch cultures, and from these cores spread across Eurasia. Mesopotamia is the site of the earliest civilizations developing from 7,400 years ago. This area has been evaluated by Beverly Milton Edwards as